Well, you couldn't even get out of bed. So, and it went to all your joints.
Yeah, within 10 months it spread to all the joints.
And it started pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You couldn't eat. I mean, I had to cut your food up. I had to feed you at the worst that you were, which we'd never, ever had that in all those years, ever. You'd always been able to carry on, always. Your hair started falling out. Anything that's like a chemo-based drug was doing to you.
This podcast is called Reconditioned because this is the place where you'll learn how to truly recondition your entire life. Where other wellness podcasts or platforms focus on one particular area of wellness or inner growth, Reconditioned is a one-stop shop for all of it, so that you can get all the information you need to heal and up-level the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of your life in one place. Because that's what I needed when I was healing from the arthritis I had from the age of 2 that left me disabled by 18. I got myself to a place of complete wellness after a very long journey of immersion into the world of healing, where I learned how to heal the whole self. My purpose now is about bringing that to you, and my Rise membership is an extension of that. For women who want to take their wellness and growth to the next level, there really is nothing out there like it. You'll be part of a global community of like-minded women with access to 14 modules that literally take you through everything you ever need to learn in order to bring your life to a place of balance and abundance. With group coaching calls with me, personalized support, community book club, and so much more. Rise becomes part of your life, your lifestyle, enabling you to thrive in the ways you always dreamed, with me right there beside you, championing you through your journey. It's not always open for enrollment, so if you're hearing this now, it's open and ready for you to enroll. Just go to the show notes for the link or visit laurenvaknine.co.uk/rise. Welcome back to Reconditioned with me, Lauren Vaknine. Thank you so much for being here. Today's episode is extremely, extremely special and extremely close to my heart. And it's taken me a few days to actually do this intro following actually recording this episode, which I recorded with my mum. I kind of explain it on the episode, but after a few podcast episodes that I've been on recently, on other podcasts, I've had so many comments from people asking more about my mum, because it was her incredible strength, connection to her intuition, her tenacity. It's because of her that I'm here today doing this. Although at 18, I kind of took the baton and essentially went on the healing journey and studied myself, it was her decision to opt out of the pharmaceutical route when I was 2 that has enabled me to remain as healthy as I have. And even though I got as disabled as I did, I was able to grow normally. I was able to look normal. I didn't have joint deformities, joint replacements. Like, we speak about all of this in the episode, but I just wanted to kind of give this a little bit of time in the intro just to explain just how grateful I am to my mum and her choices, because I'm not actually sure I did that in the episode. She obviously knows how grateful I am. We talk about it a lot. But I didn't want it to seem like I've recorded this episode with her and haven't kind of raved about her and just how grateful I am. When you hear the episode, you will understand what I mean. It's really emotional. We both get super emotional. I'm not sure why I didn't cry more, actually. I think I was holding it back, but we did both get super emotional and had tears in our eyes and kind of held it back to continue with the episode. But you'll hear how emotional we got, because this journey and this story isn't just my journey and my story. It's my mum's as well. Having been faced with a diagnosis of a disease for her not even 2-year-old, imagine how that feels. And I know many of you listening do know how it feels, because many of you do have sick kids. So this episode was recorded, first of all, for you guys, so that you would hear what it actually means as a mother to stick with your intuition, regardless of anything that's going on externally around you. But I also did it for me and my mum. So I'd always have this kind of conversation, because although my mum and I are super close, we live 5 minutes from each other. We speak about 7 times a day. We're really, really close. We don't ever just sit there and have the conversation like interview style of everything she went through. And you know, how the whole journey was for both of us. So she told me things I didn't even know. And I thought, because I'd written a book about this and asked her so much, that she, you know, I knew everything, and I didn't. So I'm so happy I have this recorded for me and for you guys to be able to really hear about the journey from her perspective, being a mother of a sick child, and how she managed it. The mistakes she felt she made, the decisions that saved me, the decisions that no one else agreed with, really staying strong in the face of adversity in a time where no one really understood holistic healing and what that meant. And for me, her absolute strength and tenacity and strong resolve to stick to her resolve that she wouldn't give me those drugs is why I'm here today, able to be healthy enough to help guide you guys. I wasn't healed throughout my childhood, but it was the fact that I wasn't on those drugs that would have had horrendous side effects for my whole childhood that enabled my body to be able to heal as well as it did. To have had, you know, a chronic degenerative autoimmune arthritis from the age of 2 my whole life and not have any joint damage, that's miraculous. And in the episode, you'll hear why. So this intro, I guess, is a thank you, a little nod to my mum, of appreciation and immense gratitude to everything that she did for me. And I hope you enjoy this episode as much as we enjoy recording it. I'm sure you will feel our emotion. You will feel all of the feels, I think, because I just don't know how you can't. It's just so interesting listening back to it as well, and hearing this journey told kind of almost, you know, me listening from a bird's eye perspective of my mum talk about, you know, me as a sick child. So this really is our journey of how deeply this arthritis impacted our lives, how disabled I got, and how my mum dealt with that in the later years, and how essentially at the end of it I managed to heal. So I hope this serves you. I hope this gives you hope, if that's what you need right now, if you're in a similar situation in any way, and I hope to continue being able to serve you. So if you enjoy the episode, please do share it with friends, family, anyone who you think can benefit from this. Please leave me a rating and a review, because that helps other people to find it, and connect with me on Instagram. I'm always over there chatting to people. And of course, if you want to go deeper into this healing work and the work of holistic living that I've cultivated over the last 2 decades, that is all on my Rise membership, where I teach my members exactly how to get to the point that I'm at now, which is a place of balance and homeostasis, and to continue crafting a holistic lifestyle for my family. So all of those details are of course on the show notes, and I will leave you now with the episode. Fun fact, humans take in more information in one day now than they did in their entire lives in the 1700s. No wonder we're overwhelmed. Our brains and bodies simply haven't evolved to manage this level of stress. And until that evolution happens, if we want to be well in mind and body, we need things that help alleviate this stress. For me, one of the key tools in my daily wellness toolkit that does this is the Sensate. And if you've been here a while, you'll know how genuinely obsessed I am with this product. It is a piece of health tech that fits in the palm of your hand, and it basically sends infrasonic waves through the chest to activate the vagus nerve and calm the autonomic nervous system while you listen to the specially composed audio within the app. I usually use the Sensate for 10 to 20 minutes before I sleep to reduce cortisol levels, calm my brainwave states from the hectic day, and send me into a deep sleep. clients of friends of mine who have a sensate have told me that their sleep has never been so good. People who usually struggle with sleep just wake up in the same position they went to sleep in. Everyone needs a sensate, in my opinion, and I particularly recommend it to anyone who suffers from overwhelm or anxiety and anyone who wants to deepen their meditation practice. And you can get £30 off the sensate by visiting getsensate.com and using code Lauren30. That's GETSENSATE.com, Lauren30. Thank you so much to Sensate for supporting our mission here at Reconditioned. Welcome back to Reconditioned, everyone, and thank you so much for being here once again. If you are new here, welcome. If you're an OG listener, thank you for continuing to come back. And a pretty special episode today because I am here with my lovely mummy, Marsha Vaknine. And the reason we're doing this is because when I tell my story, obviously it's not just my story, it's also my mum's story of having a child that was diagnosed before the age of 2 with a chronic lifelong autoimmune disease. And whenever I tell my story, whether it's on my podcast or another podcast or wherever, the first thing people talk to me about is my mum, because I talk about how she kept so strong in going down a more complementary route, less conventional allopathic route. And we'll get onto that. But so I always get people saying, well, your mum's amazing. And, you know, how did she do it? But a few weeks ago, I was on the Heal podcast. If you haven't listened to that one, go over to Heal with Kelly and have a listen, because that's really kind of my whole story in full. And it was such a beautiful episode. And we spoke about, you know, healing in every sense of the word. And after that episode, I got so many messages, and so many of them were about my mum, asking, you know, how my mum did it and how she kept so strong, and, you know, what she knew before, what she knew already that gave her that impetus to carry on, and she didn't. So then a friend of ours suggested that we record together, and I asked my mum questions so that we've always got this. And I don't know why it's taken me till season 12, season 13 to do this. This will be season 13 when this comes out. So that's why we're here doing this episode. So this is going to be not my story, but my mum's story of having a child with a lifelong chronic autoimmune disease for her whole life, and how my mum dealt with it. So welcome.
Hello.
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 Welcome to the pod. So let's just start from the beginning. And they've heard so many times about my version of being diagnosed before I was 2 and all of that. But why don't you tell everyone about your story and your side of that, about how it started and kind of up to the diagnosis?
Okay. Strangely enough, 13 is my lucky number.
Oh, there we go.
So there we go. So you were just before your 2nd birthday, and you had to go into hospital, and they were going to do a biopsy on you.
Well, you've missed out the first bit, which is noticing the symptoms and going to the doctors. Fine. And not having...
Okay, so yes, just a little before that then. So you were at a childminder because I always worked. And when you got home one day, I saw that your ankle was swollen. I called her and I said, oh, hello. Has Lauren knocked herself or fallen down? And she said, no, not that I know of. Anyway, I left it over for the weekend, and you had a very hot ankle and it was quite swollen. We were very fortunate at the time because we had a really good doctor who sent us straight away to the orthopedic hospital, which was, luckily enough, was down the road. Then that transpired into you being admitted to hospital, and again, luck would have it that we'd seen a paediatrician, and he was on the ward that day, which was very, well, never strange, because, you know, we know that things are sent to us. And he came along and he took one look at you and said, she doesn't need a biopsy, she's got Still's disease. And I heard disease, and I just didn't know what that was or what to think. So obviously later on we found out that it was juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. And we went to the hospital and we saw the leading specialist at the time, who specialised in juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, top of her game in the country. So, people came all over the world.
And just to mention as well, that was on the NHS. That wasn't, we didn't go private. We just happened to be at the hospital where she was the paediatric rheumatologist there.
Correct. And she looked at you and examined you and said, oh yeah, we can treat Lauren with massive doses of steroids. And to be honest, I didn't even know what steroids were. As you said many times, I went to the library, I read what are steroids, and I saw what they were and what they could do to a body, and you were just a baby. And then I thought, well, I'm just not going to put that in you. It was simple as that. I didn't know what I was going to do and how I was going to treat you. And then I have to tell this bit because it's, again, when something's sent to you, it's sent to you. I went to what at the time was, I suppose it would be Iceland now. And then I was standing outside and had smelt some funny smells. I thought, oh, what is that? And I looked up and I'd been to this Iceland many times.
Iceland, the shop, not the country.
No, not
just
the
so
country.
Everyone understands.
Right? No, not the country. And there were some really funny smells. And I looked up and I saw next door was the Edgware Centre for Natural Health. And I thought, oh, I'm going to go in there. And I wandered in, and that's where all these lovely sort of strange smells were coming from. And I looked around, and a young Scottish guy, and if you're ever hearing this, your name is Ian, I don't know what your surname was, said, can I help you? And as he said it, I burst into tears. And he said, oh, my goodness, sit down and I'm going to make you a cup of tea, herbal tea from a health shop, obviously. And I sat down and we had a little chat, and I explained exactly what was going on, why I was so upset. And he said, oh, we can definitely help you. And that's how it kind of started. So we started with Ian and his herbal remedies, and then there was another lady called Vicky. And then it led into homeopathy. My parents had been spiritualists, so I knew all about healing and had been in their circles. And that's kind of how it happened, yeah.
Mm. How, when you spoke about how you felt when he made the diagnosis,
mm-hmm.
when you were sitting in the appointment with the doctor who was telling you about the steroids, and you didn't know anything about what steroids were or what this disease would do to your 2-year-old, and you were 31 at the time?
Yeah, early 30s.
What was going through your mind? Because obviously you made a choice to not do it, but what was actually going through your mind in those appointments?
Well, it's really strange because I don't think we've ever said this before out loud, but in my head, I just heard no, no, no.
Mm.
And I didn't know what that no, no, no meant, had no idea. But I knew, well, until I read about steroids as well, I don't know, it was something in me that just didn't want you to have medication conventionally. Now, I'm not saying that conventional medication is not good for everybody, and that's why we call complementary medicine complementary, because it can run alongside medication if that's what you want to do. It's just not what I wanted to do as a mum. And
so how did the doctors respond to that? Because you've never told me that no, no, no thing.
Oh, no, I know.
But you have such deep connection to your intuition. Well, we'll get onto that.
So, well, it was really hard, and I just want to sort of intercede here because a mum that we know whose daughter has the same thing phoned me quite a long time ago, and we're in a different age now as well, and she had said that she didn't use conventional medication. The doctors threatened to take her to social services, which I've never had. So I didn't have to deal with any of that back in the day.
Yeah. So, but when you were making that decision,
mm-hmm.
you're faced with these big opposing figures of authority. What was going through your mind? How did you stand your ground? I
don't know. I can't give you a definite answer to that. All I know was after I'd read about what steroids are, I wasn't going to give you them. So I had to find another way. And whatever, you know me, I'm pretty stubborn, right? And I just knew that I wasn't going to do that. So, okay, I'm not going to do that. They can say what the hell they want, but what am I going to do? That was the big question for me. I was more focused not on what they were saying to me.
So it wasn't making you upset, because they said some nasty things to you.
They did.
What did they say to you?
Well, after I started on the homeopathic route, which is not, it's an expensive way of doing stuff, but I thought the only way at the time as well. And now, what did they say to me? Oh, Mrs. Vaknine, you really don't need to spend your money on this stuff because it's not going to help her. All sorts of things. I mean, I was really made to feel like I was not a good mother.
What did they tell you would happen to me if you didn't go down their route?
You'd be deformed, you'd end up in a wheelchair, all of the things that... But just in my head, I just felt that I was doing the right thing. So if I felt that I was... I mean, look, had it come... We'd had years. It didn't happen overnight that you were well on homeopathy. It took years and years.
Well, that comes late. That's another part of the story. But I think that there are parents who are going to be listening right now, thinking, how do I know I'm making the right decision? If they're telling me with my 2-year-old or 5-year-old or 7-year-old or whatever it might be, or 13-year-old, that, she's going to end up with joint deformities and joint damage and all the things they told you, how were you able to stand your ground and stay so strong against that? Like, how did you know? You knew nothing about holistic medicine, holistic healing. You'd left school at 15. Where did this come from, this strength? And who was supporting you at the time?
Nobody, because my parents were obviously from a different generation, although mum and dad had been healers, but they only kind of understood the medical world. Your father didn't really understand either. It was just a case of I knew what I was doing was right. I can't explain it because I think it's on a spiritual level. I don't think but I just knew in my head that I wasn't going to do what they were asking me to do. And how I felt was I didn't really care what they said. I've got to be, what I'm like. Listen, I didn't care what they said because I knew that this was the right. I didn't know exactly where this was going to take us or how I was going to do it, but I knew that I was going to do it. That was it, really.
They always say you get given the things you can manage.
Yeah.
And you are that kind of character where you don't care what anyone says and you'll do what you know to be right. And there'll be so many parents out there listening that don't know if that decision is right for them and maybe don't have that strength of character. And it's just kind of I suppose a lesson to always listen to our intuition.
It's funny because our doctor actually, I went...
Our GP.
Yeah, the GP. I went with you. I can't remember what it wasn't about for the arthritis, but I went to him for something with you and there was a student with him and whatever it was, I said to him, right, well, this is how I feel what is wrong with her. And he said, you're absolutely right. And he said to the student, always listen to the mother because the mother's intuition is never wrong.
Oh, wow. He said that.
And he said that, and that was our doctor.
Wow. You never told me that either.
No, well, there you go. It's coming now. Things are coming back. But and I've never kind of forgotten that. And I think that's so true because as a mum, and he also said, the mother will know the child better than you will.
I'm not sure. And obviously this doesn't go for all doctors. There will be many doctors who do, but I'm not sure that was that old school doctor, who went into it understanding that there was more to it than pharmaceuticals. And I'm not sure I have met any doctors like that in recent years that can say to a student, the mother will always know. In many people's experience, the doctors always think they're right. And, and we don't really get as mothers anymore that kind of trust. And I think that makes mothers not believe in themselves as much and believe in their own intuition and makes them question their intuition. There is so much out there now that it's so confusing that my experience of seeing people around me has been that mothers just feel pressured into decisions without having all the information. And there's very rarely people around them saying, trust your intuition.
But I think listen, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have any of that. And I don't think we certainly didn't have the pressure you all have today. We didn't. And plus the fact I'm a stubborn mule, and I was going to do what I felt was the right thing. And I knew it was right. I mean, I just knew that it was right. I didn't even have a question about that. I never questioned myself. And I was surrounded by everyone that believed in medicine, so that was quite hard, I suppose. But I didn't think of it like that. I just had this direction that I was going in with you, and that was it.
Yeah. I guess like me with the vaccines, I never once questioned that I would ever give my children vaccines. It wasn't. Obviously, I researched the hell out of it, but there's never been a split second where I've thought, is this the right thing?
That's it. It's your intuition, isn't it?
So what a lot of people want to know is, obviously, we didn't take the homeopathy and then, boom, I was healed. It didn't happen like that at all. And I obviously have my theories on why. I'd love to hear from your point of view, because actually it's funny because we're talking about this now. We don't actually.
No, we've never sat down.
We do talk a lot about this stuff, but we've never had this like kind of interview style discussion. So what is your theory on why? I mean, what did the homeopathy do, but why didn't it, quote unquote, cure me as a child, from your perspective?
I don't think anything was going to cure you as a child. The cure is within ourselves as well, for everything that happens to us. But neither was medicine going to cure you. It would have suppressed your symptoms. So that was the thing for me when I started learning more about homeopathy. Homeopathy wasn't going to suppress. It actually could make things a lot worse. So you can take a remedy and you feel like 10 times worse than you felt before, whereas...
Not for long, though, just to preface
and that goes. That goes.
It gets worse before it gets better.
Correct. But medicine actually will suppress symptoms and you feel a bit better. And you think, oh, okay, well... So it was... I can't... it's so hard to answer these questions sometimes because it's kind of on a different level. So the homeopathy, I knew I had to carry on. I knew it wasn't going to be simple. I kind of got that it was going to be a long time. And then we did all these different other things, these mad, crazy things, like the healing in a Methodist church, and I'm Jewish and all of this. I would have gone to Lourdes with you, and I've said that before. I would have taken you to Lourdes if I thought anything was going to cure you. And so it was that thinking where you are going to try everything in an alternative way.
A natural way.
Naturally, yeah.
So here's my perspective on it. And I know you think this as well. I think maybe I've just got to remind you because it goes when you're recording a podcast sometimes. You didn't have all the answers and all the missing pieces on what it means to actually heal holistically. So healing holistically is healing the whole person. So you took me to the homeopath and you took all the money that you didn't even have to do all those things. But we didn't know about nutrition, right? There wasn't any internet blogs about nutrition.
Well, no. So kind of I did a bit, because the very first thing that I did with you, and again, I don't even know how I found this guy. He was a natural homeopathic dietitian, and you were tiny. And so it was just as you got it, and it was probably before I took you to found the Edgware Centre for Natural Health, that he was asking me what foods you liked. And so here, that's reminded me again of stuff. You loved milk products. I mean, yogurts, you used to eat you could eat 2 or 3 at a time. And milk, anything, cheese, soft cheese, hard cheese, you loved it. You suddenly went off of all milk products, couldn't get you to eat them. So I found sort of the non-milk products. And at the time, actually, there were only a couple. One was soya and one was non-dairy.
Goat's milk, wasn't it?
Maybe goat's milk, yeah. Which were not really that nice back then. They really weren't. There were no flavours. It was all plain, and I sort of had to put some fruit or something to make it taste better. But you just went off suddenly. And when I saw this dietitian, this homeopathic dietitian, he said to me that a child's body is pure because it hasn't been, you haven't smoked, you haven't drunk coffee and any of that. So your body's, and you were listening to your body. So your body was saying, no, this is not good for you. Don't have this. So you stop. It was really hard for me because you ate very little, and it was finding other ways of giving you other foods. So we were lucky because we kind of had a Mediterranean diet. So you did eat lots of vegetables and fruits. We always had loads of fruit, vegetables and salad things.
So sorry to interrupt the episode, but this really is a public health service announcement. If you're trying to improve or optimize your health, you might be missing the crucial ingredient that most people don't realize they need. You see, it's not vitamin D you need to be supplementing. The mineral we are most lacking and need so much more of in order to be able to synthesize that vitamin D from the sun is copper. Without copper, which gives us retinol, we literally cannot absorb the fat-soluble vitamins A, D, and K. And the iron in our bodies is not distributed effectively because copper is what transports iron around the blood. So it's not that we're anemic, it's that we are low in copper. Without adequate absorption of all these minerals, your health can never be optimal. So many people I've worked with feel like they've tried everything, and simply introducing Recuperate IQ, which is a very specific formulation of copper and other ingredients, improved their health within weeks. It's formulated by Morley Robbins, who created the root cause protocol that hundreds of thousands of people around the world have healed as a result of. I've personally been doing it for 8 years. This supplement is finally available in the UK after years of me trying to get hold of it, and you can now get it at yourhealthbasket.co.uk using code LaurenV10 for a 10% discount. That's yourhealthbasket.co.uk and code LaurenV10. But what we didn't know was things like artificial sweeteners. So we had a lot of squash, we had Diet Cokes, we had,
Your father loved
probably,
Diet Coke.
well, we all did.
Yeah.
That was part of we had quite a lot of sugar as well. So where we were having the Mediterranean diet, there was all that other stuff that we didn't know. You had no idea. Like, who knew in the 80s that Diet Coke was bad for you? Or, the sugar-free squashes, or, going around to Nanny's house and having melted chocolate and custard. And that was, I think where the missing pieces were to an extent.
Yeah, food-wise.
Because we didn't know. I think maybe had we have been able to do gluten-free, sugar-free, but it would have been so hard then. Whereas now you've got all the substitutes and there's so many options that it's not as hard for people to find, alternatives, when we didn't have any of that. So I think that played a huge part, because now knowing what I know about artificial sweeteners and things like artificial fragrances in the home, perfumes, like those things really affect the ability to heal, our ability to heal. And, those might seem like small things, but they're huge. And when you cut those, I wonder what, if the autoimmune response would have, weakened a bit, and like, we can't know. But the point is that there were loads of missing pieces that we didn't yet have. We weren't meant to have them because we were meant to go through that journey. But when people, I think it's just important, because people will go, well, if the homeopathy works, why didn't it cure you? From your point of view, what did the homeopathy do for me over the years, and what did we notice how did we notice it supported me?
So the way that we actually noticed it, and it was twice. So I used to tell you that I had to keep you under the radar of the hospital, obviously, because I needed to know what your bone density was and how your bones were progressing. So what we noticed that in a physical level was you were not in any way, shape or form, you didn't have any deformity. You looked normal. You couldn't do sports like other children could, but you, on a physical level, you looked as though nothing was wrong, and you've always looked like that.
In comparison to what was your point of reference?
Children that were taking conventional medication, like massive doses of steroids at the time. And you could see that immediately. They were thin, their faces were bloated, they didn't look like children should look.
So their limbs were shorter, like their arms were shorter, and they got deformities. And that we knew from the hospital, because we went to a group hydrotherapy every week. And though my joints weren't, normal, I couldn't, I had the swelling and I had the pain. I was the only one that looked normal.
Yeah.
What was that like for you? At what point did you notice that? And how did that make you feel like spurred you on?
So there were 2 points I noticed. That was when you were quite young still, maybe 8, 9 by this time. That's when I really noticed when you were with other children with the same disease. I could see that you were swollen at times, but as I say, there were no deformities in you. So that was one time. And then the second time is when you did a talk at the House of Commons. And I remember distinctly saying to you, there were like 25 children, ages ranging from 5 to 28. And I said to you, Lauren, what do you notice? And you said, what, Mum? I said, what can you see? And you said, I don't know what you're talking about, Mum. And I said, look, every child here doesn't look like you look physically.
And I was still quite disabled at that point.
And you were I think you were 20 at this stage?
Yeah, about that. I was still 19, quite 20. Ill.
But you didn't look it. And that was the thing. It was sort of an invisible disease in you.
Yeah.
So that was the 2 times that I really noticed.
Yeah.
That, and then I knew I had done the right thing. That's when I knew. Mm-hmm.
It's quite emotional for me hearing like having this conversation like this. Don't stop. So I've got. All right, let's actually go to this. How was I different to the other children though? To children at school, and what was in me that you noticed? Lauren can't do that, or Lauren, gets like this, or how did it affect me? Both physically and emotionally, from your perspective, that you saw it as being different?
Anger. You were angry. You held a lot of anger. And physically, you couldn't sit on the floor and fold your legs like other children, or on your knees. And sometimes we used to sit on the floor and I'd be on my knees and you'd say, Mummy, I can't sit like that, it hurts. And, listen, there's a mum now, you understand, all that stuff. But I never let that define you. I never let it define you. I wasn't going to let you grow up as this, disabled child that couldn't do. And you did everything that everyone else did in your own way. So no, you never won a race, and didn't see me hiding behind the tree crying my eyes out
at sports day.
Which
we'll talk about those situations. Yeah. That's like what was said. That's there was the anger, there was the emotional stuff. Maybe we'll get onto that a bit more, because I think parents dealing with similar need to have to have that knowing that other people were going through that. But physically, what was happening to me, and then how was that affecting you?
Well, in the way that I've just said, really, because if you couldn't do the things that other kids could do, you got angry, and then I would be upset because you'd get angry with me and I'd get angry with you, and then I was upset for you.
What sort of things was I angry about? Like, what sort of things couldn't I do that you wanted me to do?
In a physical way more than anything, really.
That's what I mean. So what sort of things, like specifically? Well,
sports day, for example, which, the kids really enjoyed. You didn't, because you must have felt that you're not going to be able to do this. In I guess things like that. But you're saying another way. I can't think of this moment.
No, I just thinking about that sports day in particular that you spoke about. Can you elaborate on that?
In a way that how you felt, how it made me feel? Or, it made me feel very, very upset that you couldn't do those things. But I knew one day you'd be able to do everything. So I don't know why, but that's what I kept in my head. And it's hard when you see all the children around winning a race, and that must have been really hard for you. And I got that at the time. It was hard, but I try to keep it on a normal level of, okay, so you didn't win the race, you know. And I think it's better today because I think it was very competitive back then.
Yeah.
There's such a difference in times now where children, if they don't win the race, they're not made to feel that they've lost the race.
Right.
Okay, but then
don't you think that there should have been, like, knowing that this was a disabled child, there should have been something in place to not make you feel like, well, you've just lost, even though you don't even have the ability to run. Yeah, there should have been something.
Well,
like,
there
why
should have
was
been a
there
lot
no
of things,
provisions?
really, shouldn't there? But you know, you can't go backwards. Yes, there should have been, and that's why now it's in many ways it's a better age because it's more understood. It wasn't understood then. It really wasn't understood. We didn't understand it, you know.
Yeah.
So people that were teaching you didn't understand it. How would we ever understand that unless we read a lot of books?
I remember you saying always that I was always more tired than other kids.
Always you were very tired. You take yourself up to bed, that used to upset me because I thought there's no other child that would take herself up to bed. You know, they'd always want to hang on and watch TV to the last second or, you know, make an excuse, and you were very, very tired all the time.
Were there other things like that?
What, being very...
no, other things that just made me a bit different, or things that
that made you different. They, you know, just on a physical level, that was it really. But what was going on with you emotionally and mentally, I didn't know because that's the thing, we didn't speak about it. And I think I've said that years later. If only we'd have spoken, you know, like you speak to your children now, but it was all very much get on with it. You know, I can help you on a physical level because I can see what's going on. I can see you're swollen, so I'll give you massages and ice and hot and cold and olive oils, all different types of olive oils, and I could do all that, but I wasn't equipped to do the mental thing, the emotional thing. I just wasn't equipped with that. I wasn't brought up in an age that we did that.
Do you think was that the reason that it wasn't even in your sphere of consciousness? It wasn't that you were trying to make me stronger. It was just that you didn't know to even talk about it with me. Was that what it was?
Maybe. I mean, maybe it was the generation that we didn't, you know, I used to say about analysing everything, and we didn't analyse it. I think we just got on with it.
Because I remember the only time, and it sticks out so poignantly in my head. So I had what we haven't mentioned is that the arthritis spread from the ankles to the knees quite quickly, but it stayed.
That was a different story, isn't it? Because your eye was getting worse. Yeah. So we haven't.
Well, then, but because that was quite soon after the initial diagnosis. So why don't you talk about how that was for you?
I was told that it could go. The arthritis would cause a condition in the eye, which it did with most children with Lorentz palsy arthritis, which started in one ankle. It could go to her eyes within sort of 3 to 6 months, and it actually did. So the hospital kept a check on your eye. So it causes as it causes in your joints inflammation, it caused inflammation of the eyes, of the cells in your eyes. So that was another story to deal with. So we had to deal with the eye, and that was drops, massive amounts of steroid drops. But because I was so worried about your eyesight, I didn't know any other way of. You had homeopathy for the body and massages and all sorts of things, but I couldn't take a chance with your eye because you could have gone blind if you didn't have those drops. So we gave you the drops.
Would you have done that now? Do you think you would have found another way if you had more information?
If you have more information, yeah, but in retrospect, you didn't. So no. I did what I felt, again, was the best that I could. I wasn't going to mess around with sight.
What did they tell you about the topical steroid eye drops, though?
Because they didn't really tell me.
Well, they did say that it didn't affect the body like the oral steroids did.
Exactly. So I thought, okay, putting it in the eye, it's not going to affect anything else.
Yeah.
But that was, so that was a reason that we did that.
And we didn't know that it would affect the rest of the body as well.
No, however much you kind of research or whatever, it doesn't say anything.
Yeah. And then there was the steroid injections.
Oh God,
what was that like for you?
No, that was almost like being tortured. That was like a feeling of you were being tortured.
Well, you've never told me that. So why don't you talk about that? Like when was the first one?
When you came out of school one day, and I got such a shock because your eye was almost white. There was like this white, which I'd never seen before. And we just whipped you up to Moorfields, and
it wasn't Moorfields, it was St Thomas's, wasn't it?
St Thomas's. Oh yes, St Thomas's.
I remember that day well as well.
Right, you're right.
Because I was sitting in the class, and I was in year 2. I was really young, and I said to my teacher, "I need to get my sunglasses. You'd bought me sunglasses to protect the eye in the sun
from the drops, because you had the drops,
and it made my eye so sensitive." And I asked if I could go and get them. And it was as if she was just thought that I was being a princess or something. Because I remember the sun shining through the window and I was sitting right next to the window and she wouldn't let me go and get them. And I knew something was wrong. And I came out and I'll never forget the way you looked at me. And you literally grabbed me. You picked me up and threw me in the car. And you must have made some provision for Ilana because she must have only been 2 or 3. And I just remember you speeding up to the hospital.
Yeah, I don't remember. I must have, maybe probably Nanny or Dad were at home. I don't remember exactly that. I only remember grabbing you and taking you up there because something was drastically wrong, and they gave you a steroid injection into the eye, and it was awful. It was really, really awful. And just being so little in this massive bed. That's what I remember. You were so little. It was emotionally, it's tough. It was tough.
So how did you manage that for yourself, those emotions?
I suppose I didn't. I suppose I just actually didn't manage them. I just buried them so that I could carry on with whatever it was I had to do. And that's how I dealt with it.
Do you think that's affected you now, like later?
I hope not. I mean, I cried a lot when I didn't cry in front of you, and I got that emotion out. And I have got a very good sisterhood, and you know that my, very closest friends that I've had since childhood, I could talk to them. So they were like my therapy, and I could tell them absolutely everything about everything. And that at that time, I didn't have the time to, and we didn't think, oh gosh, I better go and have therapy. We didn't think like that. Our therapy were the people that were the closest to us and that you knew you could respond to, and they would not be judgmental and they wouldn't give you answers or whatever, but let you talk. That's what you need to do. And that now, again, in retrospect, if you are in a situation like I was, you have to talk. You have to get that emotion out.
Yeah. I do think it affected you in some ways.
I'm sure it did.
I think it made you too strong in a way. That, you felt like you had to be strong all the time for me. So you were just always strong and not really giving yourself any time for your emotions or, this term wasn't even known then, but for your own self-care, you didn't even know what that was. Like, maybe. That wasn't even a thing for you, apart from your choir. That was your self-care.
That was my therapy. I've got to be honest. And I said that years ago, that I sang, and I love singing. We always had music on in the house. We always sang and danced around the house, didn't we? Always. And all sorts of music, any genre. We just listened to all sorts of great music. And that was my therapy. It really was. So friends, being able to talk, and I had parents as well at the time, and you kind of hid, especially when you were young. I didn't want them to see me upset. I, wanted to say, no, she'll be okay, she'll be good, and you're hiding a lot of emotion, of course. I did know that, I didn't know that I had to, but I had to be strong for myself, for you.
I remember that steroid injection in the eye, and but one of the most traumatic experiences that I remember that always comes back to me when I'm doing inner child work or any of my work, my inner work, it seems to always creep up on me, is the steroid injection into the knees before Disney.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And I just, so I'll tell my version of the story, and then it'd be good to hear your version of the story. Is that my knees swelled up. I was 8, And we were going to Disneyland and from Disney World in Florida. This was the Friday, wasn't it? And we were going on the Monday, right? And my knees just swelled up as if overnight. We now understand, psychosomatic, psychophysiologic medicine and doing a lot of inner child work. I think I've realized that I was really scared about going to Disneyland because I knew that it would be hard for me. I don't know I can't really pinpoint what I was scared of, but I was a bit scared, and perhaps that triggered this flare up, and my knees swelled really badly. And so I didn't go to school that day, and you took me straight to the hospital, to where, our local hospital where our rheumatologist was. And bless her, never had the best bedside manner. I don't know why she was a paediatric rheumatologist.
As many of them.
Wow. Literally emotionless. And she just said, well, if you want to book in for sedation next week, because if we're going to, take out this fluid and remove the fluid, they would drain the fluid and then inject the joints with steroid. And if we're going to do that, she's never had that done without sedation. So we'd have to book you in because we can't get her in for sedation now. Or she can have it done now without sedation, and then you'll be able to go to Disneyland. And she probably won't be very comfortable, but you'll be... And then the decision was handed over to me at 8 years old. Well, what do you want to do, Lauren? And I was just like, well, I need to be brave because otherwise everyone's going to miss out on Disney World. And I always remember that day and those steroid injections being one of the most traumatic things, because when they drain the knee, it's this massive needle. And do you remember those needles?
Gosh, I do, and I remember the fluid. It was like
and the fluid
a
would
litre
come
of
out.
fluid being drawn out of you, yeah.
And
I'll never forget.
And they moving the needle around as they're drawing the fluid out. And then you know that you've got the next knee to go. And then I was exhausted, and then you wheeled me to the car and we went home, and I basically had to sleep for the weekend. And then we got on a plane on Monday to Florida, and I remember that flight being hellish, but it must have been so hellish for you. So what was that? What's your version of that story?
I just want to pick up on another point because I will forget, as you know. It's the age, but psychosomatic, and that went into adolescence.
Yeah.
And whenever you had somewhere to go that was lovely, you were going to do something really lovely. Yeah. Something happened to you. Yeah. Always. Yeah. It was not a coincidence, and so that is something.
Well, now that I've done, a lot of work on the psychophysiologic element of pain, and for anyone who wants to know more about that, Dr. John Sarno's books really helped me with that. It was because I never felt like I'd be enough, right? I always felt lesser than everyone else because I wasn't the same. And, if I remember once I was going to a bar mitzvah and I was so worried about wearing heels because all the girls wore heels. And, I wish I was a teenager now. They all wear trainers. They don't even take bags.
I felt like that last weekend.
Yeah. And you went out in heels and everyone was in trainers.
Never again.
And, and I wore heels and I think it was this feeling of never feeling enough. So if I was going somewhere, even if I was really looking forward to it, on the outside, and I wanted to go and I wanted to be a part of these things and experience them. There was something in my subconscious that was trying to protect me from getting hurt physically or emotionally. And now I know it to be that. But it happened so much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So your version of the Florida story.
Well, it was super, super traumatic for a parent. Super traumatic. As were the injections into the eyes, or just seeing you in pain, which again, you never ever moaned. That was, and I remember saying that once to a doctor, you never moaned. You never complained.
I wonder why. I didn't know any different, maybe. Because do you remember that time? I'll always remember when someone said to you, she's probably in pain walking down the stairs, because walking downstairs and I remember hearing that, and I was quite young. I mean, before 10, I would say. And I thought, I didn't realise not everyone feels like this walking downstairs.
That was your normal.
It was my normal. And so I didn't complain because I didn't realise that it wasn't normal until I got to a certain age and then realised that it wasn't all normal.
But Florida was really, really difficult because it didn't matter that we had to take you in a wheelchair all round Disney World and everything. It didn't matter what we had to do for you. It was the fact that happened. So it was hard for you, and it was hard emotionally, and for everybody else. It wasn't the physical thing for us.
But when the doctor said to you we had to make that decision, what went through your mind, if you can remember?
It was just, again, it's sort of being strong and thinking, okay, we've got to have this done, but we'll give her a lovely holiday. So perhaps that will make her forget the pain. Perhaps that will, I don't know if it did. It probably didn't. But, it was a lovely experience. You loved it. I remember at the time, as children, both you and your sister. And we had a great time. I remember having a really good time there, and all the different experiences, things that we saw. So that kind of had we gone home and cancelled that holiday, it would have made it an experience for me might not have had again.
Yeah.
And we did that for you, and your sister.
And there's so many of those experiences, aren't there?
There are loads of those. And as parents, for anybody that's listening, if your child has an illness, it's a roller coaster ride. You cry, you laugh. It's hard. It's really hard, and you can't show those feelings to your child. So you have to try and, in the best way that you can, sort of hide your emotions, because you don't want the child to feel that they're causing this in you.
And I guess nowadays there is more information on that, and
there's therapy.
And we might say now, it upsets mummy to see you in pain, without putting that pressure on the child. Or there might be ways to let them know that you do feel what's going on, as opposed to it's all fine, everything's fine, you're going to be fine. Because I think it's finding, just for people listening, I don't think you did the very best you can. I've always said that you did what you could with the resources you had, and I think you did the most amazing job. I think now we have more information, and for any parents listening now managing this or anything similar, there isn't a balance. And I think we have more information on how to help children process emotions, and for us to process our own emotions, and to find a balance between being strong for them and not giving them our shit, like telling them, oh, mummy's so sad that you're sad, because that gives them baggage, but also letting them know that you see what they're going through, you're validating it. And
on a parental point of view, you're also juggling all the balls. You're juggling the balls of working full time, of being as hands-on as you can be for your other child, to not make them feel that the child with the disease is getting all the attention. Which
she did. She very much did feel that.
Yeah, she did.
Later we realised,
definitely. And managing a home and everything else that goes with that, without
aging parents. And
my mum and dad were getting older, not in great health. You sort of, you don't think about yourself, and that's, I think, you go into this kind of overdrive. So and not everyone can do that.
Yeah. And I know, I have a lot of clients that are in that sort of situation. They've got a sick child, and they're working, and and it's a full-time job, actually, finding the solutions.
It's a day and night job. I mean, you've got two jobs.
But this finding the solutions to healing is a full-time job.
Yeah.
And having that added pressure of all, the things in life. Like, I actually don't know how you did it all.
I don't think you do. I don't think I'm not being the person that analysed anything today. I think people can analyse too much. Maybe I didn't analyse enough. I don't. Maybe there's that balance as well. But you just got on with it. You had to, because otherwise you couldn't exist. You couldn't survive. So you just did it.
But you did so much. I mean, you managed me. You had another child. You worked full time. You cooked a fresh meal every single night. Apart from Sundays, where we had to have toasted cheese sandwiches.
Definitely. Well, no, but that was after lunch. That was in the evening, darling.
You did, and you cleaned. You didn't have a cleaner. You did everything, and you did it all yourself. And I don't know how.
But I look back and I think, I was young. I was in my 30s, and thank God, I had the strength. And you do it. You just do it. So you don't stop and think that I'm doing all of this. Oh gosh, look, I'm doing all of this. You just do it. Thank goodness again. I had that nature, and that's again from maybe what I saw my mum do too. So that follows on, doesn't it?
One of the holistic living challenges I spent years researching and trying to figure out was how to keep teeth healthy without fluoride and which fluoride-free natural toothpaste to use. I've found a few over the years that I've liked, but I finally found a brand that does a toothpaste that me and my husband love, and a kids one that not only has all the perfect ingredients to keep their teeth and gums healthy naturally, but that they love. The toothpastes are by Wellness, which is the brand created by Katie Wells, aka Wellness Mama, who we love here at Reconditioned. I'm such a fan of these toothpastes and I would love you to give them a go. And no, they're not as cheap as Colgate, and for good reason. But you can get 10% off by visiting health.com/LaurenV10. That's health with an F, health.com/LaurenV10. And that will apply a 10% discount to anything in your basket, not just wellness products. Please report back to me and let me know how you find these toothpastes. So what about the teenage years? Because then
the toughest.
Well, no, there was those, when I started high school, before the toughest years, I was very stable. The disease was very stable.
Gosh, yeah. That was the best time. Well, you had a time in primary school where it was good for a bit as well. And then you were quite stable for a long time.
About 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctors had said when I was younger, it could burn itself out by adolescence. Did you think that was happening?
I always believed that, well, as the years went on, then I kind of knew that was not going to burn itself out. And that hopefully, well, yes, it was a very positive, negative. It was, and that's emotionally, I always believed you would be well. There was nothing that ever stopped me believing that. And I tried to get you to always believe that. And I don't know, later on as we're talking about that now, did you? I don't know.
No, I never knew how. And I used to get angry at you, especially when I was at my worst in my late teens and early 20s. And you'd say, you're going to be all right. You're going to get better. And I don't know if you were faking it to make it.
No, because I always believed it.
Because you always believed it. And I used to get angry at you. And I used to say, look at me, Mum, what makes you think, why do you keep lying to me and telling me this? I don't know what makes you think. And I truly did not believe that I would. And then I did. And that was probably all because of you drumming it into me for all those years. Now, I don't know where that came from because I didn't. We're such different characters. I think that was hard as well because we clashed a lot. And you didn't, you were able to put your feelings aside and get on with things, as you say. I'm not that character. I never have been. So as a child, I would take everything to heart, take everything personally. Everything would affect me. Everything would make me emotional. And I don't think you couldn't understand that because that wasn't part of your... So that was, so I didn't have that. I wasn't the kind of person who just naturally was positive and would believe that I would heal. All those times you said it, I kind of never took it, or I never believed it. And then I guess as an adult, as I was growing up, and one day I just did. And I was like, well, I'm just going to do it. But as a child, I truly didn't. I saw the negative in things. I didn't see the positive. I didn't see things. I saw the bad in the world. I saw all the bad things that were happening, and I found it very hard to see anything that was good. And that's so sad, really, isn't it?
Yes, that makes me very sad, actually. That's made me emotional because as a child, you shouldn't ever feel like that. No.
But that wasn't you. That was my nature.
It was, but...
That was my nature. I always say to people who work with me now, who I'm teaching about, moving into joy. And I say, if you think I'm like this naturally, I'm not. It's not natural for me to find the joy. And I've had to work so hard to become that person. I was never that person. So I think there was that, challenge as well between us where you would get on with it. And,
for sure.
And as I got older, there were all those, different challenges. Just to quickly go back when we were talking before about when it spread to the knees. But the one time where I felt you did open up to me and I grasped onto it for dear life was it then spread to the tendon in my left hand, in the finger in my left hand. And we were walking to school and I was 9 and I said to you, Mummy, do I have arthritis in my hand? And you got really emotional because you didn't realise I didn't know. because doctors just didn't talk to children and you didn't. So then you got really emotional because you felt bad that you hadn't told me, and you said, you do. And did you not know? And I said, no, I didn't know what it was. What did the doctor say? And you said, you can always ask me. And, if you don't know anything, you can always ask me questions. And I think that was one of the few times where you kind of opened up like that. And that must have really upset you that I didn't even know. And this was all happening.
Because you were at an age where I suppose I thought you understood that.
Yeah, well, I did. But I didn't know. I understood I could have, but I didn't. No one ever said to me, "Oh, you've got arthritis in your hand now." Luckily, it stayed in those 5 joints though for a long time.
Yeah.
So then the teenage years. So how was that for you? That was a fun time.
That was a fun time. They were very difficult times because you were trying again to be inverted commas normal. And what was normal?
Yeah.
And
that was my main objective in life.
Yeah.
Was to fit in. And
unfortunately you met not some great people of your age.
Well, that was a bit later. So I'm talking about just the high school years. That was, even then I was trying to be normal. I was trying to fit in. I had to, I would kind of sabotage lovely friendships to be in with the popular crew just so I could be accepted.
But that's how it started, you mixing with not so great people. And you can see that I could see you were doing that. And you were at the age where you definitely were not going to listen to anything we said. So that continued. And that was difficult. That was, as a parent, that was very difficult. And you're going to go through, difficult times with children that are adolescent and etc. But we'd been always so close. We'd always been really close. And you were very loving always. And we had that sort of very beautiful connection. We're a very sort of cuddly, hands-on family that kiss a lot and cuddle a lot, and then suddenly you started turning into this person I didn't really know, and that was hard because you were growing up as well. So you wanted to fit in, you wanted to be normal, and it was all the counterproductive things that were hard for a parent.
Well, also because I was 17 and I'd had these 4 amazing years of feeling like the arthritis might even be gone, and then it came back, and it, what it was in my mind was, oh, this is happening, and I knew that it was going in a direction, and I was at performing arts school, and I made all these new friends, but it was getting worse and worse and worse, and I knew it was going in that direction, so I was just rebelling against the world, angry, so angry, and doing everything I could to ignore it. So smoking weed for the pain and, hanging out with all those people, and that was just to ignore it. I wanted danger. I wanted something to make me feel alive and make me feel like my whole life wasn't about arthritis. And unfortunately, that manifested in really horrible ways. There was also the not eating stage at 13, 14.
Yeah.
And that was control.
And I'll never forget that one night we were sitting, because we always had dinner as a family, always, every night, a cooked meal, and we sat down and laughed or argued, which was quite a lot. And you were not eating, and I'd actually phoned the school and spoken with them that you didn't know. And you would tell me, I had a really big lunch, I'm not hungry, or I had a big breakfast and I didn't, And I'd phoned the school on this particular day and found out that you weren't having lunch and you weren't eating breakfast. And I confronted you and I said, I've spent a lot of money and many years trying to get the best nutrition into you that I can, that a person can. And now you're just destroying everything that we did for you. And, that's emotional now for me. And I think something clicked in you.
It did, literally. And I was so thin. Do you remember?
Yeah, oh God, yes, I do remember.
I was so thin. I was,
and we're,
just bones, and I've got a picture of it, and it was horrible. And I didn't think I was. I remember thinking that I was fat.
Well, that's a kind of anorexia, isn't it?
And it was, but I think if you'd taken me to a clinic, they would have said I was anorexic. I mean, I was skin and bone and thought I was fat. And yet somehow there must be some strength that you've passed from you to me, because you said that to me and something clicked in me. And I was like, I can't do this to her. And I went and made a hot chocolate.
Yeah.
You remember?
Yeah.
And I took it up to bed and I said, that's it now. And I stopped. I started eating again.
Yeah. That was a difficult time. There were many of those. Listen, you go, if anyone's listening to this, it's, as a parent, again, you go through, I'm talking from my perspective, you know, you went through a million times worse, but you go through these periods of different emotions that your child's dealing with, which obviously you feel everything.
See, I'm not sure it was worse for me, and I've had many conversations about this with all different people in my life. I think that there is an element of when your child's sick, it is worse for the parent than the child, because it's really hard to explain, but it's like that was just my life. But I had all this love and all this protection and all this care and all these people trying to look after me and find answers for me. And I was in pain, but it was, I as I've got older and obviously as I've had kids, I just think that it must have been harder for you than it was for me, that it's just a different thing when you're not in control. It's not your body. If it's your body, even now, I would rather it be me than you, because I'd be able to deal with me, but I'd be sad if it was you.
Well, I think that you deal with it in a different way. You've got, again, it's all about the strength of somebody and not making you feel that that's not that anything's wrong, because we know something's wrong, but just to be as positive as you possibly can in every situation that crops up.
Which you always were.
Because I think if you go the other way, it doesn't, I always say, you know, you can cry and one must cry, but you can't keep crying, okay? Because it makes you feel better at the time. But if you keep that emotion, that kind of negative emotion, that's not going to do you any good. So it's a balance, isn't it? Of emotions. It's hard, but it's hard. And not everyone is capable or has the ability to control to an extent, I suppose.
I think that's the work, though. And that's, you know, what I've learned, going all deep into the emotions and spending so long on them, and then learning that actually the emotions are stored in the body, and when you can remove them from the body, you remove them, and then you have to move on. So it is that balance of you have to process them, you have to talk about it, you have to process it, but then you have to somatically process it through and out the body, which a lot of people don't do. And the somatic healing for me has been, you know, a major part of my journey, and what I do with the kids now, as you know, because I just think it's just important to remove it from the body and then say, right, we've dealt with that emotion, now it's gone. And, you know, otherwise, you know, as Don Javier says, you lose your personal power. You remain in the dense frequencies of those difficult emotions.
Sure.
And that's a choice.
I've said it in different ways to you. Yeah. I will say, Lauren, let it go.
Yes, but I couldn't accept
in a different way.
But also, to be fair, there wasn't the processing of it before.
Correct.
So for me, a character like me, I can't just let something go until it's been dealt with. I can let it go after it's been dealt with. But I wasn't, because you and Ilana weren't those type of characters you could just get over something. I couldn't. And I needed that validation of that's happened and we can see that that's made you sad and I'm really sorry about that. And do you want to talk about it? And then having spoken about it and having maybe that validation of being understood, then you can let it go. You know?
Yeah.
Because otherwise you haven't really dealt with it.
Correct.
You're not moving on. You're just not dealing with it. So there came the point then that I got really bad, and the eye got really bad. And the eye was so bad, in fact, that they said that there was cataracts, many cataracts in the eye, and they couldn't remove them while there was so much inflammation. So we needed to get the inflammation down. So I had to take this chemo-based drug. And I was 17, about to turn 18. I think I turned 18.
You had, yeah.
And I was an adult, so I wanted to make my own decisions. And I thought, well, what's this homeopathy done for me my whole life? Clearly nothing. That was my narrow-minded view on it at the time, without realising just how much it had done. And one of the things that we haven't mentioned about what it did was the other kids with arthritis, and one of the other things that was happening to them was they were getting all viruses and illnesses and everything that was going around, and I didn't. And for a child with an autoimmune disease, that's also a massive thing. I wasn't sick all the time.
Yeah, totally.
And again, there were things that we missed, things that we would follow this, holistic lifestyle, but then, we'd have antibiotics because you didn't know, you didn't have that information. But the homeopathy had kept my immune system strong.
Yeah.
So it had done a lot, but I couldn't see that as an obnoxious 18-year-old who was faced with this now disability, nearly disability, basically, like really, really, knees and ankles really not working.
And I begged you not to take it.
So what was your
Well, after all the years of not doing anything on that side of things, and you were like, they were selling this to you as some miracle cure, they did tell you all the side effects, which because it was a chemo drug, you could lose your hair, you
get very sick.
You get sick and all of those.
Low immunity, and it could damage your liver.
All the years of building up your immunity, this drug actually destroyed it very quickly.
But wait, what did you, when I said I'm going to take it, what was your feeling then?
Well, I felt now I didn't have that control. You were now an adult making your own decisions. And that's why I begged you, please don't, because of all the years that you'd had homeopathy, we'd kept you, it kept you strong. It had kept you, your joints were great. You didn't, as I say, you looked like an 18-year-old with no health problems or no physical problems. And this probably was one of the strongest drugs they could have ever given you. And again, we looked into what it was and the side effects, but you didn't listen, and you knew better now. No, it wasn't the fact of even you knew better now. It was you were an adult and you were going to take control of your own life now, and this will probably cure it all. I don't know actually what was going through your head, but you did it. And of course,
I just wanted relief. I was meant to go to university.
Yeah.
I'd had a really, really tough few years where I'd put myself in really horrible situations trying to rebel against everything. And I was doing drugs, and I was, it was a really hard few years. And then that kind of came crashing, even those options to hang around with those people and all of that, because I just got too ill. And then this drug was, and I was decided that I was, going to fix my life and I was going to go to university. Mm-hmm. And I got into Bath University, and I chose Bath because it was a really healing city.
Yeah, and they did the course that you wanted.
Acting and directing. And I thought it would be good for me to get away from all the people I'd been around those past few years, not go to all the universities that everyone I knew was going to. And I was really excited about it. And then it was the fact, and then I had to defer my place because I wasn't well enough. So I thought, well, if I take this drug, then maybe it will make me well enough, and then I'll be able to go next year. And they allowed me to defer my entry for a year. Mm-hmm. Little did we know.
Little did we know.
Little did we know that this drug would nearly kill me. So you'd asked me not to take it, and I did. So how did it make you feel when you saw me deteriorating so rapidly?
I just felt that we destroyed all those years from the age of 2 now to 18. All of those years, it had destroyed everything we'd worked so hard for. Mm. And that's what I felt.
But it didn't, did it?
Because it didn't. Well, when we look at it for a short time,
it definitely destroyed my body. But had I have all those things you did from the age of 2 to the age of 18, mm-hmm. is what kept me looking normal, is what allowed me to grow. When all the other kids with arthritis were so short and mm-hmm. didn't grow properly, their growth was stunted. And
there was a reason. We always say there's a reason for everything.
Well, I always say that I had to get as sick as I did to want to find the answers to heal. Mm-hmm. I think had I not have gone on that drug and it not has made me as sick as it did, I would never have been pushed to find I would have gone to university, and I would have just tried to muddle through being a little bit disabled and manageable kind of levels of disabled. It had to get that bad that I was literally floored and couldn't do anything. And so there was, what was the first kind of symptoms that you started noticing? Because I was only on it for 10 months, but it literally...
Oh, it seemed like a lifetime, honestly. Yeah. Well, first of all, you couldn't even get out of bed. So, and it went to all your joints.
Yeah, within 10 months, it spread to all the joints.
And it started pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You couldn't eat. I mean, I had to cut your food up. I had to feed you at the worst that you were. Mm. which we'd never, ever had that in all those years, ever. You'd always been able to carry on, always. Your hair started falling out. Anything that's like a chemo-based drug was doing to you. And I remember this, asking about the side effects. Do you remember that? That was like a huge thing. 70% and 30%.
Yeah.
70% of people it works for, 30% it doesn't, which is when Lauren decided she's never going to go back to that rheumatologist again. And it had the worst side effects on you. So seeing it was really the first time, apart from the times where you'd had to have maybe the steroid injections that were physically very difficult for you. This was the worst ever, because we'd never, apart from the topical drugs, we hadn't ever seen you like in this devastating, both emotionally and physical way. Never seen you like it. And that was so hard. You were so ill. I mean, you were so ill.
Yeah, I couldn't.
I felt
ill the whole time, and a mouthful of ulcers, and it was, I was really, really ill, and it happened very quickly.
It was hard.
It's hard thinking about it. I talk about it a lot, but talking about it with you is different.
It is, of course.
What were you thinking then when I was taking it?
Well, I could have killed you, actually. I was so angry.
Because I don't remember you. I remember at the beginning you saying, please don't do it. But while I was taking it, I don't remember you ever saying anything. I just remember you...
Well, because I couldn't. Because you weren't listening to me. Until something happens, that you wake up and you realise that, oh, wow.
Because you still took me to all the appointments as well for it. I had to go every month and have the blood tests on the liver. They knew how badly it affected the liver, but they still weren't observing my liver in the way they should. And the reason I felt so ill was because it damaged my liver. And it was only like a year later that I forced them to do blood tests to say, why do I feel so ill? Like a year after coming off it. And it turns out my liver was completely damaged and they hadn't picked up on it. And again, just to kind of clarify to people listening, that yes, it doesn't make everyone feel that bad.
No, but I saw somebody the other week and I was so happy to hear that they were amazing, because we'd had the total opposite effect of that. Yeah.
But now we understand that so now I understand about MTHFR and, the genes and epigenetics. And it took me so long, in my research until I got to that part of it.
Yeah.
And learning why some people's genes are just not equipped to deal with stuff like that. And your body will literally just break down. And some people's bodies can manage it a bit better. Still doesn't mean you're not putting toxins in your body that your body's going to, at some point, have a reaction to, maybe. But for me and, many others, and so their version of it works for 70%, it doesn't work for 30%, is so much more nuanced. And it's sad to me that supposedly the most intelligent people in the world, these scientists developing these things, reduce it to it works for 70%, it doesn't work for 30%, when it goes so much deeper. They should be doing genes tests on everyone before they take it, before they give it to them. So that was kind of where the journey started for me.
Yeah,
for me, kind of taking the baton from you and saying, well, I'm not having this. And actually, I'm going to do something about it. And that was when everything opened up. I think something changed in me after that. I softened a bit. I softened to the idea that I could heal. And I made a decision to heal. And it was 2002. And I had no idea how I was going to do it.
It was like history repeating itself, because I had no idea how I was going to do it from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just, spiraled from there, I guess. And there were many things that happened, and it took over a decade to get me to that point of, quote unquote remission. I don't like to call it remission because it's like a medical term that it might come back. But that, I guess that was, and I never did get to go to university.
No.
But I went to the University of Life, where
as did I.
Yes. Where I studied relentlessly and taught myself everything I possibly could about the body and the mind. And someone should give me a PhD, I think.
I think you definitely deserve it. And I always say to your dad that I can't, sometimes I listen to all your podcasts And I hear you and I think, how does she do that? She never went to university, but I know that you study and you research relentlessly, and you have so much knowledge, and you don't need university because you are the university.
We've all got access to so much information now as well. But I think the key is the intuition, because you can read all the research that you want, but there's always going to be conflicting evidence. And what it comes down to when you're looking at those conflicting results and thinking, well, this person says that and this person says that.
Yeah, the intuition.
It comes down to intuition.
Just go with what you feel. Just go what is in your heart is going to be right. Mm. Your intuition will always take you on the right path. Definitely. No question.
And I think as well, one of the biggest lessons that you taught me was, and you never said this in words, but this is what you taught me through your actions: never make a decision from a place of fear. And just for parents listening now, it's the worst place to make a decision from. And doctors, in that environment, that medical environment, they're only going to have one answer. Mm-hmm. And that answer might not be right for you personally. So if that's their answer and they're saying, if you don't do this now, this is going to happen and that's going to happen, that's not the place to make a decision from. Go away, do your research, and then make a decision from a place of intuition, from a place of informed choice.
Yeah, those were probably the wisest words you'll ever say to someone.
Yeah.
Make the decision, from what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And you'll make the wisest choice because everything is being sent to us. If you can tune into that as well, which we're very fortunate. We are just very fortunate that we have been we've been given that gift.
Yeah.
And I guess it must be really difficult for any parent that hasn't got that. Mm. We all have it. You've got to tune into it.
Or hasn't got, we had you raised me with spirituality. It was part of our upbringing. It was never a strange thing. So there was always, even though I found it hard as a child to have faith because I wasn't naturally like that, there was always faith around, and there was always, healers, all the healers you took me to, the spiritual healers and the psychic surgeons and
even if it's religion, if it's the faith, if you have to have faith.
Right. And actually, the older I get, the more I look at, I'm in my own spiritual practice, which, is not a part of any sort of religion, though we are Jewish. But the more, I have friends that do follow Judaism or do follow Christianity, and actually now being able to come to it with less judgment and be like, but they've got faith. They say their prayers because those prayers give them faith, and actually those prayers raise your vibration, and it is all very connected, and it all makes a lot more sense to me these days.
Very relieving, because I do remember in circles, my parents were not religious in any way, shape or form, but when we used to have the circle, and you sit in the quiet and the dark and you pray, there's something very lovely about that. There's something, and I do get why people are religious, and I'm not, but in a different way I am.
Yeah.
And, I do my meditation now because of you, and every night I light my candle and I lay there and I say a prayer for whatever I say the prayer for everybody and the earth and the people in it right now. And that gives you a peace. It really gives you peace.
Yeah, it does. Would you do anything differently?
Probably not.
No.
Probably not. No, I don't.
I've got us to where we are.
I've never questioned anything that I did. Listen, of course, there are certain things in your life you might do differently, but as far as you were concerned and health-wise, no, because I was sent, like you say, I was sent to you, you were sent to me. I was sent all the messages and I listened, I guess. Although I didn't know I was listening at the time, but I was. Mm. So no, I wouldn't do anything different. Wouldn't choose a different person, a different daughter, because you're the best daughter I could have.
You're the best mama.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but
you are
definitely, the child that was meant to be my child. And if I've put you on this path, then I can not ask for anything more.
Mm-hmm. And you did do that. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have gone on this path. And so it all happened how it was meant to happen. Is there anything we haven't touched on that you think we need to?
No, I think emotionally and physically for you, it was tough. More emotionally for me, I guess it was tough. But for parents that have a child with any disease, your emotions are going to be roller coasters. But as we've just said, I think if we're coming to the end now, please go with your intuition and try not to be forced into anything that you vaguely feel may not be right. If you feel it may not be right, it's not right.
And also in hindsight, us sitting here saying it was all meant to happen. If there's a parent listening now with a 5-year-old just been diagnosed, it's so hard to accept that. But seeing it now, me being 40, we can see that it was meant to happen. And so I think coming back to that idea of faith, just trust that, whatever's happening is happening for a higher purpose, and go with it and go with your intuition and don't make decisions from a place of fear. And, my personal advice is always, there is always a solution. There is always a solution. And there's always, the natural holistic ways of healing available to us are, there's many. And
there are many, and it's so much gentler.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I love you.
I love you too, darling.
Well, this was good.
It was.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. And I was very emotional.
And I'm so proud of you.
Thank you. I'm proud of you. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, then feel free to get in touch on Instagram, and I can answer, because I know this sort of episode might bring up some questions. And
can I just say something?
You
quickly?
can.
If anyone wants to, as a parent, wants to get in touch with me,
I'll put it in the show. I'll put all
so.
the information in the show notes of how to get in touch. Yeah, that's very nice. All right. Thank you for listening, everyone. If you enjoy this episode, if you know of anyone that you think could benefit from hearing our story, please send it on to them. Please leave us a review and rating, and really hope that this has served you in some way. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Reconditioned. I am honestly so grateful to each and every person that tunes in. Thank you also for taking responsibility for your own well-being. You should know that just by choosing to listen to podcasts like this that further your well-being, you're moving more deeply into abundance consciousness. Now, don't forget, I have a bunch of free resources over at laurenvaknine.co.uk, as well as every recommendation you could ever need in regards to your well-being on the LV Recommends page, all categorized for your ease. Thank you also to our sponsors. These episodes would not be possible without them, so make sure to check them out and get some pretty awesome discounts on the show notes. And of course, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get updated each time a new one is released. Thank you. I appreciate you.